It's actually nice to see people on camera, so I can see that I'm talking to a live person. So at least if you, Victor, leave your camera on, I'll be really happy to
I
make
will.
sure that I don't drop off.
No problem. Of course. Anara, please.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Anara Tabashaliva, along with co-host Dr. Victor Fett, Katerina Shrey, and our program producer, Professor Larry Shrey. We host a weekly discussion panel on Russia's war on Ukraine with guests from Ukraine, military experts, medical personnel, academics, artists, literary figures, and relief workers. Our panel is recorded and circulated nationally and internationally. We appreciate your comments and feedback. Special thanks to Marshall University Libraries and MUIT for making this weekly event possible. If you're joining us live on Teams, please feel free to use this chat to post any questions to our guest. Today's guest will be introduced by Victor Fett.
Thank you, Anara. I'm very glad today to introduce a speaker for our 106th weekly meeting of Ukraine discussion group at Marshall University, West Virginia. Our guest is Dr. Taras Oleksyk, who joins us from Oakland University in Michigan, and he will talk about science in the time of war, the emotional weight of the war, the resilience and determination of Ukrainian scientific community in the face of war. Welcome, Taras, and please introduce yourself and proceed with your talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Once more, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here in such a interesting company, and I really congratulate for you for being able to continue this podcast for such a long time and have such a set of wonderful speakers, and I hope not to disappoint. First of all, I need to probably say something about myself. Uh, I am a professor at Oakland University, which is not in California. It's outside of Detroit. I guess the sunny side of Detroit. But I came here. How I came here. It's a long story. I was born in Ukraine and born and educated in Zakarpattia region of Ukraine, which is the most western part of Ukraine on a Hungary and Slovakia border. I lived there until I was 21, and then I came to the United States, where I got my master's degree at Bowling Green State University in Ohio, my PhD at the University of Georgia. Then I worked at National Cancer Institute for a while. Then I thought everything it had to be. Uh, I had to rethink my life a little bit, and I decided to go to the Caribbean. And I lived on the island of Puerto Rico for 10 years, where I was a full professor of University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez. And if you look for me on the internet, you probably find a lot of papers about parrots and solenodons and geckos and such, coral reefs and such. So I'm in conservation genetics as well. But what I'm here for is some other things. Oh yeah, by the way, you can actually listen to my TED talk, which is right here, about that. But what I'm here is for my expertise was called because of other things that I do in Ukraine, and specifically, you may have heard of a project that we have started several years ago. That was Genome Diversity in Ukraine project, where we have started by sequencing 100 people around Ukraine, trying to figure out what is the baseline of genomic diversity in Ukraine is, and provide free data to Ukrainian researchers that would be interested in this kind of research, but not be able to raise funds for this. So that was my first contribution to genomics of Ukraine. And along came another project was in Ukraine and Romania. So we have been putting up a lot of genomes resources available for researchers in Ukraine. And then what happened, of course, is a war started, and because of my direct engagement with research there. I started writing a lot and calling attention to the situation with science in Ukraine, the general situation in Ukraine. And you may have seen our science article that came, one of the first ones that came out about opportunities for the people that remain in Ukraine and try to do science. And there's a lineup of other non-peer reviewed articles that I have published. Specifically, I think Victor has found my article on the OUP blog, which is called the same way as the one that I'm talking about today. It's Science in the Time of War: Voices from Ukraine, which is where I try to generalize our publication in the journal Gigascience about situation in science in Ukraine, but that was an academic article, and he wanted me to come up with more personal perspective, so I wrote this blog. This article was probably about 6 pages long, and they cut it down to 2, and I'm still amazed that you still liked it. But I do have a longer version of this if you bother to read it. So that's basically who I am and why I'm here. And of course, now my experience with the war started like with everyone else. Although the day before I had my niece visiting here. We drove down to University of Kentucky. She was looking for a possibility of master's degree in the United States. She is from Ukraine. And she was looking at different universities, so she came visit, and I was given a talk at the University of Kentucky on genome diversity of Ukraine, and I took her along, and I remember driving on I-75, and she was calling everyone she knew in Kyiv, and talking to all her friends, and they're kind of getting to go to bed on it February 23rd, and they were talking about what's going to happen tomorrow. They're all worried. They didn't know what tomorrow would bring. We kept hearing stories about amassing troops and the eastern regions of Ukraine declaring all kinds of, making different political statements about independence and joining Russia, and yet we were not quite sure what tomorrow would happen. We were still, as many in Ukraine were in disbelief. But tomorrow, what happened, everybody knows. At 2 a.m, we're already here in Michigan, and she knocked on my door and she said, "They're coming." And then that moment is then when the world changed forever for me and for many of us, Ukrainians, especially in Ukraine and abroad. And as you remember, uh, when you turn on TV that day, you would hear about these doom and gloom and forecasts, people talking about how Ukraine's not going to last 3 days. I got calls from my colleagues offering to shelter my family that would be running away, and they basically were telling us that this is it, you're done. My sister, who lives in Ukraine. She's an endocrinologist and a politician. She accepted about 26 refugees in my father's house. My parents passed away, but the house is standing there, and we kept accepting refugees. And she would walk around the house. It's just look what's happening. Look how many people we have. And I see all these people very busy and trying to find a place on the floor, and and corner in the kitchen, where they and the kids would eat. And this is in Uzhhorod in western part of Ukraine. So people from Mariupol were arriving. They're, by the way, they're still there. And my sister was the one finding jobs eventually. But I remember her walking into the hallway where nobody could hear her anymore and asked me like, "Are we done? Is this it?" And I said, "No, we are not done until you and I do not give up, because as long as we resist, we will resist, and we will resist the invasion, and as long as we are there, we are fighting. This is not over, and I believe in the end we will win. So why do we, of course, why do we resist? When you remember, we resist because it challenges our sovereignty, our national identity, our freedom. By the way, I did the talk on this at Ali Institute in the University of Michigan, and that came from an anecdote that I said in my class. I teach Ukrainian geography at the Saturday high school in Detroit, Metro Detroit, where immigrant kids from Ukraine come to learn about Ukraine, and they keep asking me like, why are they coming here? Like all the other kids go play hockey or tennis or go swimming, and on Saturday you have to sit there and listen about Ukrainian coal mines and hetmans and pisanki and all these kind of things that make knowing about which makes you Ukrainian. So why do you need to do that? And I thought about that, and I said, this was probably about 3 or 4 years ago, before the war. I said, every culture is important. We are globally, we are rich because of everyone can contribute something different. Every culture contributes different, and there would be only one culture, and then it would be a really boring world. And how do you know there will be a moment in time when all these other cultures in the world will be able to learn from you, from the culture that you have preserved? And I did not know that that moment would happen so soon. So uh, um, because of that, and specifically for me, Russian occupation means a loss of identity, loss of what my sister said. Are we done? Are we done as Ukrainians? Loss of self-determination, suppression of our culture and our language, and along with all the human rights and abuses, or human rights and abuses that happen. And we've seen that. And Ukrainians are united in resistance, and which is a national effort with its soldiers and civilians alike. And the world still has much to learn from our identity, and from our response and our resilience. And of course, in that we are mobilized. There are fundraisers, there are information tables, protests, articles, nation mobilized, and there are personal sacrifices. And I'll talk about a little bit about my family's personal sacrifice. My niece decided to quit looking for master's degree in the United States, went back to Ukraine and started working for Poverny Живим, Come Back Alive. She actually is one of she works for the fundraising for Ukrainian army. Her fiance, who was not her fiance when she was here, and she came back to find him in the hospital with 7 shrapnel wounds, and he was in the war from the first days, and that's when the romance started. And hopefully they're getting married this May, which I will not be able to attend because of situation. And by the way, her fiance right now, and this is I just put this slide in. Um, this is me and my family in Ukrainian school. He sends out a flag with our unit signing up, and we collected money for a drone, and the drone just arrived. This is actually February 23rd when drone arrived, and just to tell you where he is, he's in Krinky. You know where Krinky is. Everybody in Ukraine right now knows where Krinky is. The other member of my family, and this is the story. You probably heard about his soldier. Is known as the fighting professor, Fedir Fandor, who is a professor of Uzhhorod University, who became famous. You probably should ask him to come. He's a great storyteller. He is a professor at Uzhhorod University who volunteered to go to the front. In fact, got there, but in May he continued teaching his class, and in May he had to take final exams, and here he is taking his final exams on the mobile phone from his defensive line. This actually came out in the NBC and CNN and ABC, and became a very famous story about fighting professor. Now that because he speaks English, he became famous about that. But there was another fighting professor in there. That's my brother-in-law, who was his commander. Here he is. And here's his school posting saying like not only everybody knows about this guy, but this guy is a lot closer for us because he is our teacher and he's out there teaching continue teaching. By the way, my brother-in-law Ihor, he actually substituted from the front line, substituted the history teacher at Detroit School of Ukrainian Language and Culture, and he zoomed in from this is the area of Kupiansk at the time, where they were taking part in the offensive, and they he actually given history lessons in Ukrainian history from the little bunker, and we could still hear artillery shells outside, and that was an amazing experience for my students. Now, here we of course did things, mobilize support as much as we can. I told my niece I will not go to any demonstration in Washington D.C. because somebody has to do it here. And this is my children fundraising for Ukrainian Army in February 22 in the candlelight vigil that my wife has organized, and she's not even Ukrainian. So it kind of became a little um, publicized well, and my daughter kept giving interviews to reporters, and at some point she said she's gonna love Fox News because Fox News reporter always comes to her. And I said, well, yeah, you when you grow up you'll decide which side you'll take. But they if they can do that, why can't we, right? Here's my lab. Here's my niece at the time, she was visiting, and we they actually had an article about us on Nature at that time. So anyway, there are a couple of other things that we have done. But of course, what I'm going to talk about here today is about more things that have to do with science. So what is the impact on Ukrainian science? And as you know, from what I already said, many people either fled Ukraine or left Ukraine or got enlisted and got in the armed forces, as my brother-in-law and my future son-in-law have done, or in my niece and my sister, of course, is leading a lot of humanitarian efforts. I would like to highlight my student who was accepted in my lab in the United States, but decided to enlist and stay in the Iron Fence Brigade. He initially became a medic, and then they actually became a drone operator, and actually at some point became a pretty famous drone operator. And you probably had seen several videos of him destroying Russian uh, uh, what is that, like the vigilant units, the dragon, that's called the Dragon Eye, and then they destroyed a couple of tanks, etc. So in fact he's been commended by President Zelensky himself for his role in the war. Now, in general, oh yeah, of course here's his name, Valery Pokrotyuk. There is an article that characterized the state of Ukrainian science. I don't know if you had an author on your podcast yet or not, but the general idea is to make a survey to look at what Ukrainian scientists decided to do after the start of the war. And the study basically surveyed about 2,500 Ukrainian scientists, and suggested that within a year, or at least by the fall of 2022, about 18% of the population of Ukrainian scientists fled the country. The question was, of course, what kind of scientists are fleeing the country, and it's interesting that it seems like if your publications were, better, then you're more likely to leave the country. So it's actually the better scientists who left. They're also the ones that were in the higher impacts. Those are the ones that left, as opposed to stayed. And if you're on the other hand, if your publications were not prominent, or your research was not active, then you tend to just drop out. And it seems like maybe not clearly that's a bad idea, right? That people are not productive dropping out, until you think that, okay, well, these are all the young people, right? And they are the ones that don't have publications yet. So it's a pretty bad a bad impact to start with, and if the war would stop now, we would probably lose about 1/4 of all the scientists altogether. Question is again, how are these scientists who are abroad, how they're doing, right? So the Ukrainian scientists in other countries, here's the distribution. So this is a likelihood for them to come back to Ukraine. A lot of them want to come back to Ukraine. Only a few of them don't want to come back to Ukraine. But now let's see how they're doing abroad. So scientists abroad, if it's green, they're doing a lot better now than they did last year, right? The ones that are not doing so well is in red, right? Let's compare this to the scientists in the resident countries. So let's go see, they went to Poland and Germany, and most of scientists in Poland and Germany saying they're doing better than before. They're engaged more than before. The Ukrainian scientists abroad are not doing so well. Okay, and that's the problem. But it's even worse. It's even worse if they stayed in Ukraine. They're all doing same or not as engaged as before. So if you're staying in Ukraine, you're actually disengaged from science. So that is a huge problem. And the problem is, this article reviews people that left. What I wanted to see, what happens to this silent majority of 85% of scientists that stayed in Ukraine. So what is what they need? And we started that with writing an article in Science, where I was the communicating author, with my colleague Sergey Mangul from University of South Carolina, of USC, University of South California in LA. And his father is Ukrainian, but he originally is from Chisinau, from Moldova, but he's very, very patriotic towards Ukraine. And he and I have been doing a lot of things to try to help scientists from Ukraine. So we gathered a lot of people from different parts of the world, trying to make a statement that these people that stay in Ukraine, the scientists that stay in Ukraine, should not be forgotten, and you actually need to help them to maintain their engagement in science, or, as we could see, they will drop out. And of course, the Science article, it was very short, and there was not much we could stick in there. So we decided to write a larger article explaining our position, and we published it in the International Journal of Gigascience. It's a genomics journal, one of the high impact genomics journals, where I've published before, and in fact, that's where the genome diversity in Ukraine article was published before. So you can see we gathered a big representation from all different countries in the world, just to make sure that we have international perspective. And the idea was to write an article to explain what do we learn from this crisis in science in Ukraine, and how it can be applied to other countries. But there's all those messages there, but I would like to highlight specifically from this article what pertains to this presentation. So what we did here is to create a database of resources about scientists and how to help scientists, and it's a clickable table. You can just click and it will take you to a resource. that will that where you can find what you can do to help Ukrainian scientists. We also look at opportunities that were advertised by a group, Science for Ukraine. I was there at the establishing of this group. You probably heard about this. It's a channel on there's a channel on Twitter, there's a channel on Telegram and on Facebook, and I actually still host a Facebook channel, even though I don't actually put the articles there, but it's set up in my name. So if you're searching in there, that it's you or messaging it on Facebook, you actually reach me first. Anyway, so we analyzed their database for a year, and we try to look at what kind of opportunities are offered to Ukrainian scientists. And we sort of look at different countries and how different countries contributed to this. And you can see the ranking of different countries, of how they advertise paid positions, opportunities in educations, or opportunities in funding. So we classified these resources, and we looked at opportunities by the program type. So we could see the majority of these things were paid positions. So it looks like Science for Ukraine was advertising opportunities for scientists, and all these opportunities mostly at that time were geared toward hiring people that were fleeing Ukraine. So okay, you'll come here and you'll work in my lab, right? So these are the people who already left Ukraine, and they're looking for jobs, and basically, oftentimes these advertisements would just had Ukraine added to it because it was a general advertisement for a position anyway. So this would be a way to recruiting of a highly qualified scientist, which is fine, right? But again, the problem was there's not these sites did not offer enough opportunities where you could stay in the country and continue research. So what about 85% of the people that stayed in Ukraine? So what do? They're cut off, they disengaged, and a lot of young people will just quit and not continue in science. So what we try to do in the second part of this paper is to outline things that you could do uh, if you want to do something, what you could do to help researchers in Ukraine. And so I came up this table, which is there. And what I'm going to try to do here is to sort of walk you down through this table and try to show on the example of what we preach or what we actually have done or do. And so I would only focus on there's two types of mechanisms. One mechanism is your direct engagement, and the other one is your indirect engagement. So I will focus on the direct engagement, and leave the group two ways for the later time, and you guys can download the article. I'd really appreciate it if you can use it and cite it in your publications. Of course, I'll appreciate it even. The more people see it, the more people can get our point of view on this. So before writing this, I actually went and talked to people, and these are the stories that you get in my OUP blog, that where I got the information from, that where I got advice from. So my very good friend and so-called stalker from Chernobyl zone, Sergei Gashak, who's you may actually know him, Victor, if you have worked in Kyiv. Uh, uh, Sergey is the radioecologist, one of the people that track animals in the Chernobyl zone, and he and I worked on radioactivity in Chernobyl. I started working in Chernobyl in 1996 to 2001. My dissertation was on radioactive populations of the most contaminated parts of Chernobyl zone. So I worked with Sergey when we were monitoring these small mammal and fish populations there, and he's still there. He lives in Slavutich. When the war started, as you know, Slavutich was invaded, and I kept frantically calling him, and he was going out there trying to chase the Russians out from the streets. As you know, the population of Slavutich basically was resisting themselves. They were occupied, and several people eventually disappeared, but then occupation there was lifted. So he was there firsthand. he was pretty negative about things. As you saw that he felt like the research in Chernobyl zone, in fact, was very difficult. He says, well, the barbarians were not at the gates anymore, but there are also no research projects. If there were, there was nobody to work on them. There were no young scientists anymore. Many of research staff were already fighting in the war, and perhaps it was time to wrap up the scientific operation there. So I felt pretty discouraged by this, but I kept asking. I kept calling people and asking. Here's another very good friend of mine. You may have heard of him. He actually, Dr. Fyodor Kondrashov, he's an American-born. His father was a mathematician that at some point left Soviet Union in 80s or 70s or 80s. And Fyodor is a very big supporter of Ukrainian science, and he's a bioinformatician. He's been organizing schools in Estonia before the war, where you'd get a young scientists who would like to learn bioinformatics. But eventually, when the war in Ukraine started, he started organizing schools in Dnipro, and he currently he's in University of Okinawa in Japan, but he's been very active in trying to promote educational opportunities to Ukrainian students. And his idea is, when we look at Sergei's problem, nobody wants to be in the field science anymore. Of course, that's harder. But things like bioinformatics, which is something that can be done remotely, and so you can accomplish a lot more with the same resources, in the same amounts, the resources than there are in other disciplines, such as molecular biology or genetics or ecology. So his push was, let's organize courses in Ukraine for the students that stayed in Ukraine who like to learn about bioinformatics. So we got together with him and several others. Here's an advertisement for Biological Data Science Summer School in Uzhhorod, Ukraine. That was last year, July 2nd to 14, BDT3. And here's Fyodor. And the advantage, of course, was that my hometown is right here on the border between Ukraine, Hungary, and Slovakia, as far away from the front line as possible. So the kids that are in Dnipro, they can come back, come to a safe environment and learn bioinformatics in a safe environment. And then on the other hand, it's not hard for the international faculty that you can see here, the people from Harvard and the MBL and California and Zurich and Belgium and whatever, Spain, Japan, that we had. It's easy for them to come to Ukraine because Uzhhorod is right across the border. You just basically get to the Slovakian town and walk across, and there you are. So there's a big advantage for that. So we got involved, my own alma mater, into this, and we had a pretty good showing. Of course, I couldn't go in, but we had a star faculty for 2 weeks working on this, and we were able to, in fact, establish this as a regular thing. So we now, have a team that will do a data science workshop, a summer in Uzhhorod, and in every year in July. So this is not an advertisement, but close to that. If you know somebody be interested in helping out, turn to us, and we would be happy to put you to work. Right. So this is what we were looking for when we're looking for ability to establish research and educational collaborations with a university in Ukraine. So we're working with them in there, and we're able to build something that contributes to people that stayed in Ukraine, as scientists and researchers and students, and that see that we come to them, and they're less likely to drop out of science. Now, bioinformatics is a good platform for this because it combines biology, computer science, mathematics, statistics, medicine, and encourages collaborations, brings in people from different sides, and allows you to solve complex programs. Now, a lot of these skills are highly transferable, so if people get trained in bioinformatics can actually get better jobs. And in fact, people that attended our course already have been accepted to like Oxford University or start getting jobs in international companies like Illumina in England, or in Odessa. So it's all around success story. Now, what we try to do is kind of push it further and create an online platform. So this is on-site platform when we go to Uzhhorod and teach, but then we also have an online platform that we organized. And this is our webpage called Bioinformatics for Ukraine, and subtext is Scientists Without Borders, which is what we had in our Giga Science publication that prompted the OUP blog that you read. So we try to empower bioinformatics community through education and collaboration. That's a web page. This is actually Twitter, or I guess it's an X feed, bio.in. So what we try to do is to reach out to as much as wide community in Ukraine as possible. So a lot of these kids they could be studying informatics or biology or medicine in Ukrainian university currently, and they are curious about bioinformatics. So what we do is we teach them courses online. So we have a weekly schedules like you guys have with the podcast. What we have is professors that deliver a different class every month or so. And here is my partner in crime, Sergey Mangul. We already met him before. Him teaching here, whatever he's teaching, I can't decipher. This is his method. He's very creative. So him and I were basically working on putting this together. And we engaged a lot of instructors from BDT3, but also others like Anton Nekrutenko from Penn State University, another famous Ukrainian bioinformatician, and others. And this is actually slowly starting to grow to this direct collaboration with Uzhhorod University. Here is I've been teaching genomics directly at the university online. Actually, I've been doing that since very, very beginning. When the war started, just trying to do that to help out. We starting a new Masters of Science program in biology that has genomics courses in it. We established a teaching lab and the research lab in the biobank, and I'll tell you a little bit more based on our research in Ukraine. And now we're working on a joint PhD program with Bioinformatics for Ukraine. So the idea is that students apply for a PhD program in Uzhhorod, they become graduate student in Uzhhorod, and we get to have a co-advisor from Harvard or USC or Stanford or Oakland University, hopefully from Marshall University one day. So the idea is that we have these students that are there, they're able to be included more fully integrated into research program. And here is one of the early events that we had, and you remember last year or the year before, Russia started shelling the electrical grid, and then they knocked out the electricity. So the first thing we started doing, and which is second part of mechanism support, is we started fundraising for them to get them, the power generators and batteries, so that doesn't happen. So we're actually making sure that their classrooms stay open. Of course, we've done it before. So there's a couple of other fundraisers that we have done. I've done fundraisers in my backyard, cooking meat, and then in university, and there's my wife and me and my daughter, and then this is my birthday fundraiser that exceeded all expectations. We sent cars to the front. We sent boots because there was too muddy there. And even my kids, look at this is my daughter in her leadership club, right? She's here collecting $1 each, and they collected $400. Send it to help Ukraine. There's another middle school next to me that's raised $2,000, and we send it to Ukraine. So fundraising is another way direct engagement, especially if you know somebody out there that you can directly benefit. They can directly benefit from you. So a research program that you work with, you help, you understand that the money you send will grow with you. So that would be your people you supporting. So we have a group like that. And here's my good friend, the rector, the president of university in Uzhhorod. I called him and I asked him, I've heard a lot of pessimistic ideas. So what do you think? What do you think where it's going? And he says, well, that people, I don't think they're people are optimistic, but he said it's not sure if the people are pessimistic would be the right word either. These scientists that are here, they don't leave, but they're working. They really want to work in science. And three things that we need. First, we need to dismantle the Soviet habits, reconstruct Ukrainian science, and we need peace. So those are three things we need, and everything else we can figure out. Here he is. He actually came to visit me and my Ukrainian students here at Oakland. Oakland actually has this big mansion castle here that's left by the owners of Dodge Company, because this is where we are. We are old Chrysler headquarters. And we've actually developed some research programs with them. Right now, we just finished put the last report of transborder grant that we helped them to do. We sequenced 300 genomes in Ukrainian Romanian border, and these are coming online. They're going to be public. And in that, we actually established a lot of large collaborations. I've already talked about biology department, teaching in Romania, teaching in Ukraine, and this is my sister and her and the chronology lab that's helping us a lot to collect samples. Now, this is the project that I will talk about if you invite me again. This is the Genome Ukraine, which is a project that collected people around Ukraine and made their genomes public. And there's free access to this data for anybody in Ukraine. So if you want to start studying your genomics, you'd be able to have the primary data already. That this is the paper. Here's the paper and the database. But we went further, and we started asking how else can we bring more science in Ukraine. So what Ukraine needs is big projects with big investments so that can employ a lot of people. So I was thinking, I have my sister in endocrinology, I have her network, I have a university that I work with, I have bioinformatics group that I work with. So I started thinking about what's a big problem that we can solve in Ukraine. And what came up to mind to me is type 1 diabetes. It's a growing problem and in Ukraine and in the world. It's autoimmune diabetes. It's not from being overweight. It's usually shows up in kids. So in fact, there are about 120,000 people living with type 1 diabetes in Ukraine, and there is a national registry. And now, if I can get a big project studying genomes of people with type 1 diabetes, I will not be only helping Ukrainian researchers that would be working with it, but I'll also be helping doctors that are working with these people as well. And I'm not an endocrinologist, but I can help employ many doctors that are probably feeling despair right now and trying to get a job somewhere outside. So we started this project in last year called 20,000 type 1 diabetes exome cohort in Ukraine. So right now our collections are, again, they cover entire Ukraine. It's the collaboration between us, American and Ukrainian scientists. It's sponsored by Helmsley Foundation, which is a big foundation that studies diabetes. And what we do, we have many collection centers around Ukraine where the patients can contribute to science. We get them some tests for free, release information for them for free, and they own their data. But if they want to contribute to science, their exomes are going to our database. We also started a national biobank because there's so many, right? And 10,000 of them are diabetes samples, but 10,000 of them are actually controls, which is basically a characteristic of Ukrainian genomic diversity in Ukraine. And what it does, it contributes to growth of our research network everywhere. And we pay money for people to collect samples, so we now contain campaigning creating jobs. So I'm not going to tell you how much this grant is, but I just tell you it's very large. Basically, the idea is that we create a database in Ukraine. It's sequenced in the United States, but then all the data is stored in Ukraine, and all the samples are stored in Ukraine. And we are about in 8,000 out of 20,000 individuals right now. And the consequence of this is a growing biobank of blood and DNA samples and trained personnel and functional molecular lab in Ukraine. So this in itself, the biobank creates the opportunity to train and employ more people, and our research network actually puts in people into research, and then they feel like they're not alone. They're not left out there somewhere. Nobody cares of what they did. So they're part of the process. We're putting on the papers, they're putting on the presentations, they're getting their names heard, and they feel like they're engaged in international science. And I just received funding to extend this for 3 more years, which is great because we're going to continue this. And I also received this. I wanted to brag a little bit. Yesterday, I received a Fulbright Scholar Award, so I'm going to Poland, and I will expand it to Polish population as well. But the idea is to reach people that Ukrainians. There's about 1 million of them in Poland, and a lot of them are students in universities. And my idea is to organize our workshops and recruit people, Ukrainian students and Ukrainian researchers in Poland, to get them to work on this specifically Ukrainian project. So they get engaged, they get reconnected back to Ukrainian scientists, and they do something big that can be noticed in the world. So and it's great that Fulbright will actually sponsor this. As what else we do is we do seminars, courses, conference, and workshops. So we participate in online events in Ukraine. Last week, last Friday, I was in a online conference on endocrine diseases. So that was all the doctors from Ukraine. They wanted to increase their qualifications. They actually listened to my genomics lecture. I was very proud to be able to contribute to that, thanks to my sister who's organizing it. And now my postdoc, who's actually also teaching it. So I'm very proud that my Ukrainian postdocs have taken part of it. Did some other presentations in Ukraine. So participating in Ukrainian conferences online is important because it increases their level. They feel like they're connected. They feel like they're not just talking inside of Ukrainian bubble. So reaching out is very important. So let's look at the list that I had here. Establish direct remote research collaborations, done. Donate funds, done. Share research opportunities, done. Participate in online events inside of the country, done. So I actually do what I preach. I'm not just saying that. And looking ahead, we have a bunch of things to do. All right, we still have 12,000 more exomes to do in Ukraine, and engage with other groups that could use our data and could use our expertise and can learn from us. We're building a map of genetic diversity in Ukraine, providing the reference data for people that can use in their research. And teach them how to meet the challenges of big data analysis, try to build infrastructure there, trying to continue to educate them with BD3 and joint PhD program in bioinformatics for Ukraine. And it's been 600 days of war, and guess what? We're resilient. We not only stopped the Russian invasion, we're fighting back, and we we're not losing science. We're building back, and it's all about opportunities and belief in the indomitable spirit of Ukrainian people and Ukrainian science. So I implore you, stand with Ukraine, help us. You don't want to help us personally, help it in the way you can. We did we did show I did show examples and the list of things that you could do. And with that, I want to thank you for your attention, and all the sponsors that I had, from EU to Helmsley to Oakland University to Uzhhorod University. And I will leave you with my personal contact information if you want to look more about what we're doing, our school is doing, or you can donate to our effort. We just started this fundraiser on bioinformatics for Ukraine. We're really far from our goal, so it would really help if some of you can help us as well. So thank you, and with that, I will take questions if you have any.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oleksyk. This was Taras Oleksyk joining us from Oakland University in Michigan with a fascinating lecture, which we're extremely grateful for, and we're honored to make this recording, and hopefully it will be made known to relevant and other people widely. I see already a question, please, Dr. Deutsch. Get
Hi.
your microphone and camera. Thank you. Dr. Leonard
Okay.
Deutsch, former graduate dean of Marshall University, please.
Yes, you indicate that Germany and Poland have been most welcoming to Ukrainian scientists. My octogenarian eyes could not quite see the small print on the other nations, but what about the United States in terms of welcoming Ukrainian scientists?
Yeah, it's actually interesting that you noticed that too, and we looked at that and we discussed that in the paper. I think problem it's just geographical proximity. Of course, after that first year, the more people filtrate into the United States a little bit more. But initial wave, the first year, of course, first of them, a lot of them ended up in Poland and then in Germany. That were just within geographical proximity that were able to get engaged in there. So United States does help. It's on the same graph, but it's not in the first three. So.
Okay,
Now,
thank you.
we do have, I don't know if you have a large Ukrainian community around your university. In Detroit, where I teach on Saturday school, the student population has tripled. So it's the student population has tripled. Literally there are not enough seats for the kids to participate in Saturday school. It's so with all these people coming in, there are also finally students coming into the local universities as well. I remember in the beginning, there were about 5 Ukrainian students at Oakland University. We arranged for all of them to have some financial help in that semester, and then we opened 10 ESL scholarships for Ukrainian students, and they were slow to be taken, but now there are more. So it takes time in the United States because we're so far geographically from Ukraine, and by the time people come here, they've already looked at opportunities a little bit closer, and I think they prefer to be a little bit closer geographically, and that's one of the reasons I would like to go to Poland to talk to those students that probably already went to Polish universities and they're in their fourth year, right? They're about to be ready to go to graduate school. And I want to convince them that United States is probably a really good opportunity for them to do graduate school. We have one of the best graduate schools in the world.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you. Taras, could I ask you to stop sharing your screen so we can see your face
Am I still
better?
sharing?
Yeah,
Okay.
you're still sharing.
All right, there we go.
Please. Okay, thank you so much. I am just second in this call. We definitely can be watched by a number of people. We had some Ukrainian students from Poland actually on our program as speakers in different areas, and it is a sizable population now. And with 2 years of war, those undergraduate become graduates soon. That's true. Please, more questions from the moderators or the viewers. I see we have some regular viewers here. None of us, of course, are bioinformatics experts. I do not consider myself such, although Taras and me actually stem from the same cohort of zoologists who studied diversity before DNA.
That's
Before
right.
DNA existed. Yes. Uh, and I can relate to many things that he says. More questions, please. We customarily share our data or speakers data with different local people who want to donate for different purposes, and it's like you said, you need to know some people in Ukraine directly or somebody who does it immediately as on to these communities. But it's so nice and maybe optimistic is not the right word today, but encouraging definitely is to see what can be done, and we admire your and your friends' energy and you know
Victor,
commitment.
we kind of energize each other. I think this kind of a
Yes.
work is a community work, and no one shall stand alone, right? This is there is absolutely no way I could do any of this if I was just doing it on my own, tinkering in my lab.
Right.
Reaching out to people like people is the first step and probably the most important one, and that's why I commend you on doing this podcast, because that's exactly what you guys are doing, right? You're reaching out and you're showing, hey, you're not alone. Yeah, there's all these ways of collaborate to help Ukraine, and if together we will win, right? The only this we can put against the aggression. It's a combined goodwill of people around the world, and scientists around the world is what we can work with, because that's what we're familiar with. We help where
Yes,
we can.
we have tools. When we started this podcast, honestly, we wouldn't be able to do it 5, 10 years ago because we simply didn't have remote communication tools and the format itself, which we are not news or even communication specialists. We're just a bunch of friends who decided to tell people about what's going on and realized we can do it for the world on a platform rather than just talking
Well,
among ourselves.
yeah, I would say that in a similarly, I don't think I would coming from, I'm still a zoology professor, right?
Yes,
And and, and I never thought I would be doing type 1 diabetes, but in
right.
this situation, this is probably the best opportunity for me to help maintain as many Ukrainian scientists and doctors employed. So that opportunity cannot let go, right? So I will explore whatever opportunity that there is, and sometimes, as you said, you're not an information specialist, right, or a communication specialist, but you're doing this podcast. I'm not a diabetic specialist, but I will do that because this is where I can see the biggest impact, and I was able to do
Absolutely.
this.
Absolutely. We have a question from Dr. Carol Smith. Please, Carol, open your camera and microphone.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Carol.
Hi. So what made you choose diabetes? I mean, you could have chosen anything.
Yeah.
What, it could have been interstellar exploration. What was it about diabetes that said, okay, this is where I want to land?
Right. That's an excellent question.
That's very intriguing to me, and especially type 1 diabetes as opposed to type 2.
Right. It's a perfect storm. Okay, so again, I'm a genomicist, so actually for me, data is data, right? Yes, I prefer to work with Puerto Rican parrot and Hispaniola and Solenodon, but or Spherodactylus gecko, which is what I really would like to do if I didn't have like the world crashing on me. But then when we started when I started working in Genome Ukraine. So I started working on genomics. I realized that there is no such thing as a Ukrainian Genome Project. So I started saying, okay, well, you guys over there, you can't. I'm a genomicist. I work with zoology, but well, look, you have a glaring gap in the genetic map of the world, right where my country is. Why don't you do that? And they said, why don't you do that? I said,
Yeah, I
okay,
figured.
well, I'll do that. So I did that. And then, once we published, the Helmsley Foundation was looking for what they want to do is to create as much data available to researchers to work on diabetes. And of course they would study in Africa and they would study in Asia, but Eastern Europe is one of the things that was glaring omission. Of course, that's what I've been preaching. I've been saying that there is a glaring omission. My own people are not known, right? And they basically looked around and they said, well, who do we contact? And they called me and they said, do you know anybody who could do a study like that? And I said, well, I could tell you, but I could also do it. And the reason why I could do it, and that's the part that you probably missed. My sister is an endocrinologist and she studies
Yeah, I
type
heard you
1
say that. Yeah.
diabetes.
Yeah.
I also have a postdoc, a graduate student, an MD, and a postdoc who studied diabetes at the time, genetics of diabetes. And I had the opportunity, I had the contact, I had the means, and I had a collaborator at Oxford University that I have cultivated a relationship with, so that when the opportunity came, we were ready to accept it. And yeah, why diabetes? Well, I just said it's a perfect storm. It's a perfect opportunity, and what I felt that most importantly, it was the perfect opportunity to help people there. I have to tell you that when the opportunity came just before the war, and the phase 1 of the project was funded in January. And then the money was supposed to be distributed, but the war started and they pulled the money back. They said there's no way you can actually do this project in that country. And I had to write a long appeal of how Ukrainians are resilient, they will not give up. And I literally in the grant, I had to draw a map of the military action. I'm saying that we're going to store it right here in the most western part of Ukraine, so your data is safe, right? And it will create opportunity for all these people to get engaged in science when they were refugees. So eventually they said, okay, we'll give you 1/4 of the money and see if you can do it. So in 1 year, with quarter of the money, we did the half of a project. And
Wow.
then they believed us and they give us the rest of the money for the next 3 years.
And
So
why am I not surprised that this is coming from the mouth of someone with Ukrainian background? Yes, this is
exactly.
what
Yeah,
Ukrainians
that's
do.
exactly what I
They
preach, right?
they just say, okay, just watch it happen. We can make it happen.
Yes,
Um,
give
yeah,
us the weapons and we will beat them back.
right, right,
We've just
right.
not ever been given an opportunity, and we keep trying to tell the world, listen to us. We can do this.
I know,
They
I know.
deprived us of opportunity to do it, but if we have the means, we will finish the job.
Yeah, Americans used to be like this. We used to be like this.
Well, I'm proud to be both, right? And Ukrainian American.
And I don't know what is happening in the United States right now. I am just so troubled by my country.
Well, let's
I'm not Ukrainian. I don't have any Ukrainian genomic material in my background at all. I started listening to this podcast or vodcast because my colleagues here at Marshall University were putting it on, and I wanted to learn more about Ukraine because of the war. Um, I wish that Katerina Schrey was here because she speaks frequently of having been a student at Ukrainian school in the state where she grew up in Pennsylvania because of the diaspora from World War II,
Yeah.
and wondering why did she have to go to Ukrainian school, and now she understands how important that was.
Right.
And it's
Because
just
you can
so,
learn from us, right?
yeah, it's just so amazing. Okay, so I'm wandering all over the place. I work in mental health. I teach master's level students how to be mental health counselors. I focus on trauma and loss, and I'm also very interested in the war in Ukraine and rebuilding from that mental health perspective. I'm in contact with some people in Ukraine who are building a trauma institute in Kyiv for just not just military families, but everybody, but especially military families, for rebuilding and doing sort of the thing you're talking about with scientists, but also for mental health. And again, the understanding of mental health in Ukraine has a long way to go. There's a lot of, from what I understand, very bad history where the notion of psychology has really been abused and used to abuse people. So there's a huge trust issue, and I get that. So I was fascinated to listen to the process that you went through of creating something from nothing, because we're kind of doing that too in just a completely different discipline. So I'd be interested to hear a little bit more from you at some point, just that, like, okay, well, where did you start, and what was the first email you sent, and what was the first phone call you made, and how did you start connecting the dots so that you got money to come in to support this?
Right.
Because
Well,
we're at the place where we have great ideas, but we got no money.
yeah, you know that's the this is something that I believe in. If you sort of let people what you want to do, the opportunities will come. Of course, it might be a very
Yeah.
American idea, right? I guess if I was in Ukraine before 2014, that just never materialized because there were just we were never given an opportunity. We were called Russians, we were called,
Right.
former Soviets. You just over there on the edge of the world and nobody really cares. And even now, like anything happens in the world, it pushes Ukraine in the second row of events. And it's wrong because what's going on in Ukraine is going to basically determine where the world goes in the next decades. And you and I know this, and I don't know how to explain sometimes to my neighbors that they tell me, so you believe you can defeat Putin? And I usually ask him, and don't you know me?
Interesting. Yeah.
This is exactly what we have been talking about on this program for 100 weeks. And I vividly recall the first week when me and my friends were telling everyone that this war will be more important for America than Pearl Harbor. And I was told that I'm exaggerating. But nobody knew it will continue for 700 days and
And
more.
and Victor, there are key people in leadership in the United States who still have not gotten the memo. They don't understand. And
Yeah, I
I'm
don't,
wondering who are their advisors?
Carol, I
Don't
don't
they
know.
have
I
anyone paying attention?
I don't know. I called all the congressmen I could already. So
We do it. We do it every week. There is a huge, brilliant initiative called Empathy for Ukraine, where thousands of letters are sent all over America. We do the same for West Virginia here, and there are so many people involved and so many points of contact. We are proud to be part of this. Do we have more questions? We have been here more than an hour, and we're
Thank you.
thankful
Thank you.
to Dr. Oleksyk for his time and everything he is doing. Of course, it's our honor. Leslie, please. Leslie is our student. Ask your question.
Hello.
Hi, Leslie.
Yeah, somewhat like Dr. Smith, I'm not Ukrainian, but I am, or recently was, a biology student. I graduated last year, and I do have some knowledge about genetics and ecology and things like that. So I would be interested in seeing more about your research. So I do encourage you to come back sometime.
Well, wow, thank you, Leslie. That invitation now I cannot say no to. So I definitely will come. I would also say that I'm against when I talk about being Ukrainian on TV on the radio, and they ask me, is there a genetic test to be Ukrainian? And I said, no, absolutely not. That's absolutely a crazy idea. We have a Jewish president and a Muslim Secretary of Defense. An idea of being Ukrainian genetically, to me, is offensive. Ukrainian is a state of mind, and if you have that kind of state of mind, you're absolutely welcome to join the tribe. Okay,
And
we are welcoming. We are welcoming to it.
And I should add, this is why it's not impossible. It's not possible to make a biological weapon which is genetically based.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
Very,
right. I was
very,
actually cited somewhere in that I was cited that in some of that those conspiracy theories because of Genome Ukraine and before that, before 2014, I actually worked on a little known project called Genome Russia. So that was closed down and data revoked for the fear of using our data to develop biological weapons against Russians, which is, I think, is ridiculous.
Was a big outcry over there. Thank you very much, Dr. Oleksyk, and we can stay beyond recording for a few moments to chat, but I think we have no more questions. I will conclude this podcast with again greetings to our friends worldwide and especially in Ukraine. We are witnessing your struggle and your heroism, and Ukraine will win. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
Hero Slava.
Heroim
Thank you
slava.
very much. Thank you, Dr. Oleksyk, for being with us.